Welcome to the Monkey Lab. Sorry about the technical difficulties. So this week, I noticed there's a lot of Casper sessions, and it seemed to be like a Casper Love Fest. So today is our very own Greg Nagel Love Fest. We have Monkey 2 sessions in a row, last 2 sessions of this conference, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to dig in here. So what is Monkey? It is a set of tools that can manage software installs on OS X client machines. This means updates, original software installs, and even if you just want to run a script, you can do that with Monkey as well. I actually used a Python script to search for the Java malware, and this is the only management thing I had on my machine, so I didn't have AV or anything like that, so it was the best way I could do it at the time. What all can it do? Specifically, Apple packages. You can do drag and drop app installs such as Firefox and Chrome and Opera, all the major browsers and any other .apps. You can do CS5, 4, and 3, and it will do CS6, but we haven't tested that yet because it's not. I don't think the AAME is released for that yet. But Greg has worked some magic for this. And in fact, I think there's more lines of code for installing Adobe products than there is for any other thing in there. But it works, and it works great. And of course, Apple software updates are another thing it does. And this, we actually can install Apple software updates without the end user being a local admin, which is great. And there's many other stupid Monkey tricks we can do. You can do printers with Monkey if you'd like. You can do dynamic generation of configuration files for Monkey itself, and just a bunch of other really neat things like that. And they're all on the wiki. So what do you need for Monkey? You need a web server. I prefer Apache, but you could use IIS just as easily. If you have a vast Windows infrastructure and you want to use that, you can. You do need the proper folder structure. Monkey looks for specific folders on the repo, and if they're not there, it will throw errors, and it generally doesn't like it. But we're going to go through all that in the beginning of the lab here. And clients, of course. If you don't have clients, there's no point in having Monkey. Any web host should work, as I said. IIS, Apache. You can even use some of those more obscure ones like Cherry Pie or whatever, so long as you know what you're doing with it. It doesn't really matter. It just needs to serve files up on HTTP. That's all we really need. You need it to be easily accessible by your admin machine. And by admin machine, I do mean a Mac, because we have tools that are Mac only for processing package files, since you can't really open those on Linux or Windows effectively. And if you can do SSL and basic authentication, or even more, fancy authentication if you want, it's very much preferred, because you don't want to put your whole CS5 installer up on there and have someone just be able to pull it down and install it whenever they want. So doing SSL and auth is a very good practice to have. So what does a Monkey repo look like? Well, there's the catalogs folder, and this catalogs folder is used for filtering packages. For instance, testing, production. If you have a development team that writes in-house software, you could have a development catalog. Clients look at the catalog files when they're told to install things. It's kind of like a menu. So you have your production menu, which is what is normally at the restaurant or whatever, and you want them to install just a few things on there. You don't normally order the whole menu. You just want a couple things on your clients. And then you could have a testing menu, and that's perhaps say the chef is trying out some new things, but he doesn't want to test it on the general public yet. You would have that there, and you could just pick which ones you want. And the nice thing about it is you can have Firefox in both. So you can have Firefox 10 in the production one, you can have Firefox 11 or 12, or I guess what are we up to, 12 now, in the testing one, and not have it interfere with your end users, which is great. The manifest folder is where you tell your machines what to order off of the menu. So that's where you tell it which specific items you want it to pick. You can install them, you can uninstall them, you can update it only if it's already installed, and you can do optional installs with it too, which is really cool. It's like the self-service on Casper if you've seen demos of that. Basically, they're just the logic for what the client should install, and you can nest them. So say you have Firefox that you install on every single machine, you can have one manifest that has Firefox in it, and then include that in all your other manifests. That way you don't have to change it in 10 different places when you go to update Firefox in the future. Packages is where all the installers are actually held. And it's best practice, this is just really simple, it's just best practice to sort them by vendor. Normally in the packages folder, I have a folder called apps, and then an apps, something like Adobe, Mozilla, Microsoft. It's just to keep it sensical for you. So you can organize it however you want, so long as it's inside of the packages folder. And packages info is where the metadata is that Munki generates for the packages. And the directory is actually mirrored from the packages folder. So whatever you do in packages, when you go to generate your package infos using Munki import or what have you, it should mirror that. And you want to mirror it. So if you're doing it manually, you want to make sure you mirror it. If you're using something like Munki import, which is one of the tools that we have, it will do that for you. All right, so we're going to do the first part of our lab. And there's only 2 sections to the lab. The first part is just the server setup and make sure that's good. And then after that, we're going to do all the rest of it. And on your desktops, you'll see a lab guide PDF, and you'll see a lab files folder. So open the PDF, and we'll start going through it. And if you have any questions, just ask. And we have Mac, sorry. Yes, it's Mac and Mac for username and pass. And then we have Alistair helping us, and Steve, and Enrig. Where are you? Right there. So these 3 guys are going to help me out. So if you have any problems or questions, just let me know. Thank you. Who is not done setting up the server right now? Anybody? All right. Good. So let's move on.
Just me.
Just you. Gosh. All right. So we're going to go into some more detail on this before we mess with the actual packages, so you have a better understanding of what each piece does and why it's there, really. So package info files, as I said, are metadata about the things you're installing. And they have key value pairs. If you ever looked at XML, it's just standard XML format. You have a key, the name of the key, and then the value, whether it's a string or a bool or an array or what have you. And Managed Software Update uses these keys to figure out what to install, when, where rather, and how. And the more information you have in there, the better the installs. And I'll go over that in just a little bit here. We'll go over install keys and some other really good stuff. And most are named well and they're self-explanatory. If you have any questions, though, or confusion, they're all very well documented on the wiki. The community's done a good job of keeping that updated and make sure it's very clear. So the name key, this is one of the main keys that we'll use. And it's used to identify the package, and it's what Munki uses to manipulate it. So if you put the name, when you put the name in the package info, like say Firefox, when you go to put it in your manifest, which tells the client what to install, you put just Firefox exactly as it appears in the package info file. If you do it slightly differently, capitalization's different, it won't work. So you need to make sure it's standardized. If you do it all lowercase, that's fine. Just do it all lowercase everywhere. Otherwise, you're going to run into issues. I personally do first letter, uppercase, but it doesn't really matter. And don't put version numbers or dashes in the name, unless it's something like Photoshop CS5, CS6. So if you do Firefox, you don't want to do Firefox dash 3.6.8 because Munki uses that functionality. And if you put that number in there, it'll confuse it. So just keep it plain old Firefox, the name of the software you're installing. Here's an example. You can see there's Firefox with the name key. So the key is name, and then the value is a string of Firefox. And the blue there is just the XML that tells Munki what data type it is. In this case, it's just a string. It's just a word. And then the key, same thing. It's a key called name. And then another possibility is Photoshop CS5. You wouldn't want to do Photoshop CS5-5.0.1, but Photoshop CS5 is OK, just to differentiate between the different versions of Photoshop. Now, versions are also equally important, because this is how Munki determines whether something that you've just added, if it needs to be installed on your client machines or not. So say you have Firefox 10.0.3, 10.0.4 comes out. You need to make sure those numbers are good so that Munki will say, oh, 10.04 is newer than 10.03, so therefore the clients need to install it. Here's an example of that. It's just the version number by itself. You don't want any strings in this, so you just want it to be a straight number. By default, I think Firefox calls it 10.0.4 ESR for extended service release, but you want to lop that off. It's just going to mess things up. You don't want to do that.
Put ESR in the name, though?
Yes, you can put ESR in the name if you want to. That's perfectly fine. And then you could have Firefox and Firefox ESR, and Munki would know the difference between the two of them because you have 2 different names for it. Now, installs items. These are perhaps one of the most important things you could have in your package info. Munki can keep track of installs using receipts. If you're familiar with packages, they write a receipt to the OS, and that tells the OS what's installed, and you can actually see a list of everything. And those are great, but some companies are really bad at them. They just don't do receipts, or they do crappy receipts, or whatever. So installs are a good way to keep that straight. So Firefox, you would have an install that says it's firefox.app, and then have a version number for it. And I'll show you an example for that. And Munki uses this to determine if it's installed, so it's very important that you have installs. Otherwise, you can get stuck in loops. And I've seen this happen before with several Adobe products. So you need to make sure that you have it straight in your package info. Here's an example of Firefox. It looks complicated, but you can see this is the receipt that it writes, org.mozilla.firefox, just reverse DNS. And the name of it's Firefox. Version is 10.0.4. And then this is the other bit of information that's important. Where is it? So when Munki goes to check if it needs to be updated, it says, all right, there's a Firefox.app in applications, and it's version not 10.0.4, it's version 10.0.3. It's less. And then it would go with install. Or if it sees that Firefox is 10.0.4, it would do nothing, because it says, all right, it's already updated, no need to do so. And down here, it also has a type. This is not super important, but there's different types of installs keys. There's copy from DMG, which basically you can take a file, copy it to a location, and that's all that install type is. We'll actually do one of those in the lab. It's a little bit more, it's not as confusing as this is, in my opinion, but it has different information.
Sorry, I have a question on it.
Sure.
Version numbers?
Yes.
Like, let's say they actually have, you know, for the last example, let's say they actually have like Firefox 11 and 12. Is it smart enough to say, oh, it's a higher version?
Absolutely.
They'll change it then?
Yeah, exactly. If someone has Firefox 12 installed and you're managing 10, it won't install it. It'll say, oh, that's great, or I'm not installing it, I'm leaving it go. But you could update 12 if you wanted to for them, but you'd have to manage 12.
Could I also say, like, can downgrade people?
If you wanted to, yes. You could do that. You'd use an uninstalls for 12, and then you'd probably install 10 or what have you. But yeah, you can do a lot of interesting things like that. And speaking of which, we have unattended installs and uninstall, and what this does is it installs or uninstalls silently. So what you could do, say you wanted to be evil and say, all right, I don't want people to have Firefox 12. You could package up Firefox 12 as if you were installing it. So Munki has all the information about where it lives, what version it is, et cetera. And you would put it under managed uninstalls and make it an unattended install. So it would silently disappear. So they would install it, it would silently disappear every time Munki runs. So every hour by default. These are very handy because you can do silent installs so long as there's nothing that will trip up the install. Now, blocking applications is something that you have to put in there, typically. So say you're installing Flash, and this is actually a case that we'll be doing later, but if you're doing Flash, you don't want Firefox to be running, you don't want Opera to be running, you don't want Safari to be running, anything that uses the plugin, you don't want to be running when Firefox kicks off its installer. So if you have all those in there and you have it marked as silent, if none of those are open, it'll just install without any user notification whatsoever. Silently in the background, they won't even know the difference. It'll just go. But if any of the blocking applications are open, it will warn them about it. And this is what these look like. These are bools. They're just true or false. And you just do one key with it right there. You either put true with a slash at the end, or you do false with a slash at the end. And these are very handy. Typically, I use them together. Wherever I use unattended install, I generally want unattended uninstall. And generally, you put them together like that. And if it's false, you don't really need to put it in there because that's the default. You don't need to tell it to not unintended install it. And then speaking of blocking applications, this is just a list of things that if they're running, Munki will, if it's an unattended install, it will not run and try to do the installer. It'll warn the user instead, once per day by default. Or if they're closed, it'll just do its thing. So it's a way of making Munki more intelligent about how it does its installs. And there's a lot of good documentation on that wiki page right there, and specific to this case. So some of the more advanced keys that have good functionality, there's wiki pages just for them. And this is what it looks like. You don't have to put the .app on the end. You just put the name of the app that's running, Firefox, Opera, Safari, and it knows that it should be a .app when it's looking for it running.
So that's the name of the actual app?
That's the name of the actual app. Yep. Yeah. That's the name of the actual app. It could also be, I think it could also be a process. Don't quote me on that. But generally speaking, it's the name of the .app. And another cool thing is with blocking applications, say you've imported Firefox, it knows that Firefox is called firefox.app, so it automatically treats it as a blocking application. It won't try to install it while it's running. So it's smart about that, but you still have to add the extras for additional software. Force install after date. This is one of my favorite things, because when Flash has security updates or Java updates that are horribly out of date and insecure, this will save your bacon. It really will. It'll forcibly log people out once you reach the date specified, and then do the software install. It's kind of like if you've ever done the Windows side of things, I have, so I can relate. But it's like a forced mandatory install on the Windows side of things. So it's the same exact functionality, and it's very nice to have for those things that are just so insecure you can't let them in your environment any longer. And it will warn users progressively much until the date is reached, at which point it force logs out. So it gives them plenty of opportunities and lots of scary exclamation marks saying, you need to log out and do this. Yes?
Is it a date and time?
Yes. It actually looks just like this. And this is standard date. And this is local time, it's Zulu. So it's 1 o'clock here on any given time zone. Doesn't matter. So you don't worry about the time zone. It's in the local time zone, whatever that may be. So, and then of course you have the date here in reverse format. But yep, that's what that key looks like, and it's a date key, which expects this format. So if you get a little bit of this wrong, Munki will fuss at you about it. But it'll be in the log file, so you'll know you've gotten it wrong. I've done that before.
Are you going to have like a screenshot, or are we going to see what the warning looks like?
I do not have a screenshot of that now. But it's when you do the installs, you'll have the manage software update window, and it's exactly like that, except instead of it doesn't have an icon to the left of it normally, but when it's force install, it has an exclamation in a red box. So it's just basically yelling at them, and eventually it'll pop up a window and say, hey, you really need to do this, and grab their attention. So they have no excuse to not do it. So if they say it force logged me out, it's very obvious.
So a computer wake up, if it's after the time limit, will it run?
There's a case for that. It won't just automatically log them out the second it wakes up. It will warn them a little while and then do its thing. So if it's after the time. Because I had my laptop asleep actually for a force install, and it just bugged me incessantly for a little while and then finally did it. Because I was being obstinate, I don't like to log out of my machine.
It's a new timeout value.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's every.
It's documented, but like it's a countdown that it starts.
Yeah, and it's on the list of on the wiki, has the specifics. But I know when it gets towards the end, it's like every 15 minutes, then every 5 minutes, and then you're gonna get it, and then it goes. That's what it does.
Does it just like freeze them out of everything else, or does it still allow them to like?
Oh no, it force kills.
You can have,
no access.
The window opens.
Yeah.
Like,
You get stuff
normal
open.
without it. They can switch back to their app.
No, it force kills everything if it pops up, but once it gets to that time limit, it force kills everything, logs them out, and installs the software. Everything. No, they don't get to save. They've been warned for 3 days. Why should they save? They've been lazy. They need to do this.
This is for these cases.
Yeah.
When it's this important.
Yeah, and it's only for those cases. Like I use it for the Java one because it was very important. Or either one of you, sorry.
Can you have that message predefined with whatever you want it to say, or you predetermine?
It's a canned message. I mean, if you wanted to edit the code, you could, but it's open source, but it's a canned message.
Well, there is a description field that
Yeah.
you probably might just have one thing in there that's going to be force installed, and then there's more info in the window down that you could easily use that to say, here's what's up.
Bang, 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 111.
Yeah.
For this and for blocked applications, are installation packages cached locally so that, let's say you applied it, they're getting warnings, they leave, they're home for a week, are they still going to get those warnings and it will still install, or do you need a lot of attention?
It should. It depends. When Munki runs, it downloads everything, and for the silent runs, and then it'll warn the user. So if it happens to be the point at which it's popped up, but it's the first time it's ever run, and it also happens to be the time it pops up, it'll download them and then run them in that one run. But other than that, I've rarely seen that happen. Normally it's already downloaded in a cache directory. So normally it's pretty good about that.
What happens if the process is interrupted by a computer or forced computer shutdown?
So if they force a shutdown?
And little children.
Oh, right. I've never tried that.
It's not successful, it's not successful.
Yeah.
It's going to
yeah.
reset the timer on the countdown again.
Yeah, it should rerun. It shouldn't be like, oh yeah, I forgot what I was doing. It should do it.
Yeah, you have super geniuses. I'm good.
Yeah.
If anyone's going to
Going
break
back to
it.
the question we had earlier where it caches the package
Mm.
to sign and install. What happens if you realize, okay, Apple released this update, I want to push it out, but then they release another update to that update, like Java?
Yeah,
Next day.
in the case of Java, that's a very good question. In the case of Java, I pushed out the very first one that fixed it. And then Apple released the new one. Munki knows, like say Apple Software Updates installs the new one. Munki will look and say, oh, this one's newer. I don't need to reinstall the old one.
Well, I guess my question then is, like, if they didn't install the first one,
Yeah.
and is it going to stay in the cache? Like, does it empty it out after some time?
When it runs again, it'll see that the new one's there and it won't do anything. It'll be like, oh, well, I don't need this anymore.
But is the
That's
cache
what-
sitting, but is the downloaded version 7 still sitting?
It'll go away. As soon as it realizes it doesn't need something, it goes away.
Can you set up dependencies for like the cascading Office updates and that kind of stuff?
Absolutely.
It has to be in place.
And I'll move on to that here. Yeah, I know. It's always the next slide. That's actually the next section, but after manifest. So manifests are what you tell your clients to use to install things. So this is what you're ordering from the menu. The menu is the catalog. It's everything. The manifest is what you want them to have, what you want them to consume. And it's not everything.
Sorry, just before we go on, everybody might be scared by all of those options.
Yes, don't be.
Automatically generated
Yes.
package info. Those are package info keys we just went over, and they're automatically generated by the Munki import tool. You go above and beyond and customize those.
Yeah.
So don't worry that like I have to remember all these options, I have to look up all these options, I need to make sure I have all these options. Munki has some great defaults that have been intelligently worked up over time.
But you do need to know what they are.
Right.
You need to know their
We
existence.
want all of this functionality of
Yes.
dependencies, of forced logout, of actually enforcing security patches and things like that, and blocking applications as well.
All right, so manifests are specifically what you want them to install. It's an array of strings, and this is how you make your deployments flexible and smart. You know, you can tell it you only want these things, and you can do some other really nifty things with it. But I'll show you a couple of those here. Here's included manifest, and I mentioned these earlier. You can have a manifest that has all the standard software. Say you want everything to have Firefox, you want everything to have Opera on, and you can put those all in one manifest and include it on every other manifest. So if you ever want to remove Firefox, say you don't want it anymore, you remove it from one manifest instead of from 10. And it will take effect on all the machines that have it included. And this looks like this right here. So this is actually my setup. I have Common, which is a bunch of common software. I have universal print queues for our campus. And then I have Munki certs and Munki scripts. And every client gets these 4 things. So if I change, say my certs expire, or they're about to expire. Ideally, you do it before they expire. But say my certs expire, or they're about to. I want to update that. I update my Munki certs package. I don't need to change the name here, but if I update the package and do make catalogs, so the menu's updated with the new version of the certs, all the clients will download the new one and install them. And I don't have to go to each and every one manifest or configuration and say, you know, hey, you need to update this. I don't need to do that. It's all nested and very smart. Managed installs and uninstalls. These are the bread and butter of Munki right here. This is things that you want to be installed at all costs. So basically you say, I want Firefox to be on this machine, Munki will make sure it happens. It'll install Firefox and it'll be there. Manage uninstall, the exact opposite. You don't want it to be on there, Munki will remove it. So if they reinstall something that you've had removed, Munki will keep removing it. You know? So eventually they'll give up, I assume, but you know, if you don't want something on there, that's how you get rid of it. And that looks like this. Whoa, I don't have a demo for that. What? Sorry. Managed updates are essentially, they're similar to managed installs, but there's a distinct difference with these. They're used the exact same way. You can say managed updates and then have Opera in there. But it will not install Opera. It'll only update it if it sees it's currently installed and the version in Munki is newer. So this is very handy for things like, I had a transitional period where I had Office 08 and Office 2011 out there. I didn't want to install Office 08, but I wanted to make sure it was updated. So I had Office 08 in my managed updates, and if anybody had it, they got updated. If they didn't, no big deal. They didn't get it installed, and 2011 was on their machine, so they were getting updates for that anyway. So this is if you want it to be updated, but you don't necessarily want to install it. So it's very handy in many cases, especially if you know a lot of people use software that they've installed on their own, but you want to make sure they're still secure. Optional installs are self-service. And this software is maintained by Munki after they've installed it. So say you have Firefox in there, they check it, any update you add to the Munki repo for Firefox in the future will be installed for them. So you don't have to worry about adding it to managed updates or anything like that. It automatically gets updates if they've checked it in optional installs. And I like this for install Lion package. I've actually done user-initiated OS upgrades with Munki. They just check it off, it downloads it, which does take a little while, and then installs Lion, reboots, and they're upgraded to Lion. And it's not a whole lot of pain, and it works. I've never had any issues with it, so it's worked quite well. Now, conditional items. These are a little bit more daunting, I would say, but I wanted to show you so you knew there was this functionality. So don't sweat over it. You can specify specific things to be installed for laptops versus desktops, 10.6, 10.7, whichever version, and many other things. You can even do custom conditional items if you're so inclined. You can do scripting and then have it write to a key and all this other fun stuff. But what I use this for mainly is I have Cisco AnyConnect VPN. I don't want that on my desktops, but I want it on my laptops. So you could use that to install that on only your laptops and filter it out that way. So this is what the conditional item looks like. It's an array of dictionaries, and then the dictionary is a set of keys. So you have the key, condition, and it looks like a lot of stuff. And you get multiple dictionaries in one conditional items for each condition. So this is for 10.6. So let's break it down. This is the individual dictionary. And this is a block that goes together. So these managed installs and optional installs go with that condition. So you have the condition, OS version begins with 10.6. So only machines that have an OS version that begins with 10.6 will even acknowledge this existence. It'll go through it, evaluate true or false, and if it is 10.6, it will continue on to do these things. So if it's 10.6, it gets Java for macOS 10.6. And then it also gets an optional install of Lion. Now, the nice thing about this is you obviously can't upgrade from 10.7 to 10.7. You don't want to do that. But since this is 10.6, right there, you want it to have the OS 10 Lion upgrade package. So that'll only show up for people that are on 10.6. So after they've upgraded to Lion, that optional install goes away. They don't have it anymore because you can't upgrade to what you're already on. But that's how that breaks down, and it is a bit confusing because of all of this information in line here. But once you dig through it and fuss with it a while, it took me a little while to get it right. So it takes a little while, but once you get it, it's really quite nice functionality. You can break down your installs very intelligently. And then managed installs plist. This is what we use to tell the client where the server is and how you want it to install things, and many other good things like that. You can do Apple updates. You can suppress user notifications. Like if you have a lab, I do this. In my lab, I don't want the users to be notified in the lab. I just want it to do it silently or at the login window, but I don't want it to nag the user. So you could use that. And if you want to be super paranoid, you can make it so that every single install requires a logout. Firefox doesn't require a logout because it's just copy and paste, but copy and drag and drop. And if you use install requires logout, it would then require a logout for Firefox to be installed, even though you don't really need it. So if you want to be paranoid or make sure everything's installed while nobody's logged in, that's the option that you want. There's a ton of options for this, and they're really dependent upon your environment. So I would check the wiki for specifics regarding that. And repo management. These are the tools we're going to go over. I think every single one of these tools we're going to use in the lab portion. And what you'll want to do is, don't worry about all the options. We're only going to go over a couple in the lab. But I'm going to give you a quick overview of the rest of it. So makecatalogs is what you use to generate the package info files. And this is the thing that has the version and the name and the installs item, depending on the install. It doesn't generate installs keys for everything, so that's why you need to be aware of them. But it does a good job generally. Munki import. This one's a bit newer, and it's a lot nicer. You can import installers to the repo, and it'll generate the package info files and regenerate the catalogs. It basically does everything for you, and it's interactive, so it asks you what it needs next, and it accepts packages, meta packages, DMGs, and apps. And it'll do flat packages too. Makecatalogs is what you use to update your menu. So say you've added a new thing, a new package info file. Your menu's not updated when you do that. It's, your catalogs are not updated. It's just sitting there. The metadata is by itself. So you need to update the catalog so that all the clients know that there's a new version out there. So when you use makecatalogs, what it does is it takes the new information you've put, it moves it into the catalog, and then all the clients then see it. And this gives you some flexibility because, you know, I poke around with my package info files, and I don't want clients to be looking at that instantly because I might not have it right that very second. So when you make catalogs, that's committing the change essentially and letting your clients then view those changes. Manifestutil is what we use to add installs to the manifest, which is what your clients look at to install things. And you don't have to hand edit XML if you don't want to. So if you're not comfortable with it, this might be a little bit easier. And it has tab autocomplete and some other nice things like that. But you do need to configure it before you, so you need to tell where your repo is, just like with Munki import. All right, so we're going to finish the rest of the lab, and we'll see how far we get. There's extra credit, which I'd like you to do if you get to it. It's no big deal. Worst case scenario, I have all the files available for download, so if you're really interested, you can go home and try it out, you know, on your own machines and go through the extra credit if you don't make it to it today. And if you don't use terminal a whole lot, it's really not that bad. It's forgiving. I try to be, you know, as helpful as possible with the commands. And if you run into any problems at all, just let us know. It's, you know, it's great fun. So the repo tools will make it relatively painless, though. So it's not as bad as it could be. And these are the files if you want to download them for yourselves. I have the slides, guides, and files right there for you. So let's get going, I guess.
Anything else? Thank you all very kindly.